All right, well, welcome to the From Busy to Rich podcast, a podcast for advisors to help them increase profitability and quality of life, not just for themselves, but for all those they serve. Today, I am actually on location with my buddy, one of my best friends, Michael Broderick. He's a fantastic advisor in Boston, which is almost as cool as Austin, but not quite. So we're gonna talk a little bit about his journey and the things he's done. He's got a little bit of experience in the business. I think it's your second day, third day, third day,
couple of weeks in,
something like that. So buddy, I just appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We were able to do this because we're at a wedding, and Michael stayed out late last night.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Okay. It was tough to get you roused.
Well, I had to work out. So,
you had to do some things.
To hang with the wife. We are here for a wedding.
Get pretty. Awesome. So I love, Mike, if you could, for just all our listeners, talk a little bit about what your practice is like today. And then I want to just go back in time and talk about what things were like from the beginning. And then some of the things that have just been pivotal to you as you've kind of navigated this journey. So talk to us a little bit about what it's like today.
Today we're in Boston area, outside in Waltham. We have 5 advisors, a couple of juniors, and a staff of 6. And we do holistic planning. We have from the beginning trained in the Tom Wolfe system, so we're always looking at the entire picture of someone's life, not just from the insurance standpoint, investments, but also legal documents, good accountants, all of that, so that the client has the best experience and the best results, because we work as a team with their other advisors. Started out by myself, just hiring my first person and going through, but always had that approach from the beginning. So today, just really kind of been doing this almost 30 years now. Love it, and just trying to build an organization around me that will be there to continue to support my clients, but their families, the next generations that are coming through. So we really try to do multi-generational planning. And with that, we have a good staff where, there's myself and my partner, Chris, we're here for his daughter's wedding. And then the other advisors kind of tier up with where my clients are and where their families are. So we have people in their 20s, 40s. So we really believe we'll be there a long time for them.
Awesome. And what would you say like a normal week is like for you these days?
Well, normal week, between running 10 to 15, client appointments with them, working on continuing to improve the practice, make adjustments, stay up with the times, and give the best results to them. Normal week is mixed between those appointments and building it out, but then also on several boards, being involved in the community and schools and a couple of charitable groups that we're with. So kind of balancing all that together and going through.
So when you now that, and it's a good snapshot of where things are at today. What was it like when you first started? Like how'd you even come to this, and how'd you decide? And then what were those early days like? I know we were telling some stories last night, and sounded easy. Really easy.
As we were talking, it's an unbelievable experience when you're first out there meeting people. And I did not start in this business, although my father had been a manager for a major insurance company for 40 years. I started out in property management and real estate. But one of my best friends and somebody I work with closely now, he was working for my dad, and we were living together, and he said, this would be a great business for you. So jumped into that in 88. And at that point, probably working, 60, 70 hours a week between learning our practice and everything that you got, because it's a very easy business to get in. Because you just need a very low bar to get in. I didn't even need a computer back then, but today you did. But it was just a suit and tie. And so working when other people could see you, and then weekends and nights, education, getting designations, which I still believe in lifelong learning, staying and continuing to hone your practice, hone your task, learn, stay up with different techniques that are there, because that's what our clients look at, depend on us, is to bring good ideas that meet what their expectations are. So in the beginning, it was, I started before there was, GPS, we were doing map books and a good flashlight.
Nice.
So that you can see the numbers on the doors as you're driving around in the dark, trying to find somebody's house. And then, just running appointments and then doing casework during the day. At the beginning, I was doing everything, and then started to bring on some people to help me out, to do those things that, really somebody else should do for me. Frankly, I wasn't great at doing. That's not where my skill set was.
Yeah. See that.
Yeah. Right. So, started to build a team around me to support me. Some of those people are still with me today. So it's been a great journey. And then connected with my partner, Chris. We started to build out, hire more people. And now we're, as I said, with staff and my partners, we've got 11 people, soon to be 12. And you just kind of keep pushing forward.
So last night we were talking about some war stories, and I'd like you to just talk about the guy that you were telling me the story about, that you figured out that this probably wasn't going to work really early on in your first meeting. Talk to me about that.
So you have you make appointments with anybody you can at the beginning. And so I was in Providence area in Rhode Island, and met with a gentleman late at night. It was my second appointment, so probably about 8:00. And when I showed up, I think he had been entertaining himself and watching some ball and stuff. And
he would have been a good guy to hang out with last night.
Last night.
Yeah,
but,
got it.
As we sat down and I started to go through my fact find early on, we got to a point where he did not agree that he was going to die.
Ever?
Ever. He said it wasn't impossible with medicine and technology that he could possibly never die. It went back and forth a little bit. I pushed on it, and he was adamant. And so it was pretty good, because back then, you never wanted to give up. You just felt you weren't asking the questions properly. But it was late at night, and when I couldn't get him to come off that, I finally just closed my book and said, you know what? If we can't agree on this one fact, I don't think we can work together. And,
there you go.
Maybe there were some people in the other room laughing, and he does this to all insurance guys. Gives everybody an appointment, and then just says, and then I tell them, I'm not going to die.
And they just hang out.
And they just sit there and they argue with me. And so I felt that was great, because it was like the first time that I just realized that I don't have to work with everybody. And if we don't mesh, then sometimes it's just better to move on.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he's not a client today. I think he's still alive. I'm not sure.
Do you still hold that as a standard? If they don't believe they're going to die?
Yes.
That it's still.
Yeah. I pretty much hold that as, and I say it right out. Do we agree that 2 out of 2 people die? And if they do, then we move on to the next question. If we get a no there, then I'm out.
Lazarus, Jesus came back. Both of those.
But he died.
He did die.
So,
that is true.
So
that is true.
It's not that I don't believe.
So he wasn't talking about
life.
Right. No,
I get it. He's not going to die. So I'm good with you there. I do believe you couldn't come back, and there's a higher plane and all of that. But you're going to die and then do that. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's probably worth just tuning in to the podcast today, is that they got to agree on some fundamentals. This is one,
right?
This is one, maybe if you're just doing AUM, it doesn't matter.
No, then, that's great.
Then we got a whole different set of priorities.
Yeah.
I think you just weren't thinking outside the box enough.
No, but then you really got to do longevity planning,
right?
And then
long-term
care.
Your
long-term care and guaranteed incomes for life, right?
So
it never ends.
Sounds like you just have enough tricks in your bag at that time.
I got arrows in my quiver, right? So if that person comes up, I have a product for them.
Yeah,
right.
I love it.
Maybe we could move forward.
So, Mike, if you could go back and you've clearly been through tons of ups and downs in the business. I know we've talked about them, and as you kind of observe the things that were just fundamental, that maybe are not only catalysts that help you get where you are today, but also are things that continue to drive you forward in the future. What are some of the things you think about?
good questions, good conversations. In the beginning, it was you're just kind of learning and you're just kind of going off a script. So early on, it was kind of, then I say to the new people, advisors that I work with, is that you got to get through, 100 fact finds at a minimum before you start to get into your groove and start to realize what are the different answers you can get. So, I mean, if I could, but I don't think there's any way to just jump into it, to have better conversations right from the beginning, because you're kind of through a questionnaire almost, where now it's a much more natural conversation about what's important to you, what's important to the family, because that's really what it's very personalized planning. It doesn't matter what I think someone should do. My plan is my plan. Somebody else's is theirs. So the important thing is to find out from them what it is that they want to take care of, and what's important to them, and then try to bring something together that helps them do that. So that's something that I don't think there's any way to just know it in the beginning. It just comes with experience. So as I say to new people, I probably don't say many things different than you do, but I say it with much more conviction.
I'm just way better. I'm way better.
Way better now.
Yeah.
Right. You can say the same words, but mine come through with just a bit more conviction.
I love what I do love about that, because I agree with you. It's a fundamental value we have organizationally is really twofold in what you just said. One is focus on having a great conversation, not doing a presentation.
Right.
Because when we're new in the business, and if you're an advisor and maybe you're early on and you've been given an approach, and all of us tend to inherit an approach when we come into the business, and it really feels like a bit you're on stage sometimes, and you can easily get to that place before you walk into that meeting where you're in presentation mode, and it becomes instead of a conversation, it just feels like you're dancing. And instead of doing that, if you can even walk into a meeting, and we still to this day, one of the things I do before any of our meetings that I think coincide with what you were talking about is, God, help me want something for this person, not from them.
Right.
And help me have a great conversation, not do a presentation here.
Because when you're doing a presentation, you're not really listening. You're trying to think of the words that are coming out, and you're more focused on, did I say it the way it was written down on the paper? And so now in a conversation, I'm much more, I don't even really, think about so much what I'm saying. I've done it so many times, but I really am much more attuned to what they're saying back to me.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a little flip flop in the beginning. So I think that makes a big difference now too.
So one of the things that you talked about that I've got the opportunity to observe you do throughout your career really well is lifelong learning. And so what are some of the things that you use today on a regular basis to just learn, keep yourself sharp, change things, adapt to things? What are some of the tools that you utilize?
So I went through and got my designation, CFP, CLU, all of the alphabet soup after my name, but all that was really just to learn. It wasn't so much to have all those letters. But really these days with podcasts,
yeah.
Not to get,
clearly this is the best.
This is the best one. When it does pop up, when something else, when one ends, you pop up. Yeah. And I listen, and then always get a little nugget out of it. And really, I think there's so many opportunities today to, books on tape, these podcasts, just to have something on so that it's just not dead time, in the car. But then always looking for what's the next course that I want to take, just to keep learning. And so it's very important. And even going back and reviewing some of the things that I learned years ago, but going back and just kind of looking at it, do it on a regular basis, you forget some things. So that's really what we bring to our clients out there is our knowledge, and also got to know what you don't know, and to bring in the right people there. Right. So, as Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations. And it used to be that I was nervous that if I didn't know something in an area, I felt I wasn't great. And now I realize you can't know everything, and you have to bring in good advisors and work with them as a team. That's what gets the best results for the client. Many of the people that I work with, what I say to the clients is, I know you have good advisors, but what I find is most of my clients' advisors, they're working in silos.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows what the other person is doing until, they get together, or the accountant looks at something in April and says, when did you do this? And it's like, well, last November. Because you can't do this. You got this. And a simple conversation with them would have eliminated that. So not being so nervous about knowing what you don't know and just bringing in the right person for that. And, but then also keep honing your test. That's what people count on us for.
The best advisors, I know, share that quality. It's really just a constant curiosity of there's stuff out there that could radically alter how we're helping people. And I'm going to continue to look for it. What I find when people get really stagnant in this business is what you were talking about is just absent from them. They've gotten comfortable. And, if you're a seasoned advisor and you listen, one, I applaud you just for listening, because at least you got something in there where you're trying to seek out new information, new knowledge. Because sometimes people get to that place where they're more successful than most people on both sides of the thing. They've done well. It's somewhat autopilot, and this muscle of really challenging their normal with new is not there. And as we talk about it all the time, the challenge with that, one of our greatest opportunities to recognize our future possibilities is not about necessarily abandoning your normal, the thing that got you where you are, but it's also not about rejecting new. It's about keeping that tension between the two.
Right.
And the challenge is, if you don't, you're how many years in now? 29 years. And you're still every week challenging your thought process about how you're approaching this business. And the issue is the people that won't do that. It's not like tomorrow there's going to be a big difference, one versus the other, but over the next year, over the next 2 years, the 5 years, those people become beautifully prepared for a world that no longer exists.
Right.
So I love that. What else, Mike? What else would be fundamentals that you just think about that are core to people might be listening today that are in various places of their practice, that if you could go back in time?
We've always laughed about it. I know you mentioned it in your podcast of us being at that meeting that one time. And we opened up our notebooks, and it was the same notebook I had brought to the same meeting the year before. There was all my notes, and we were just laughing like, look at that. That was such a great idea. I starred this one. I underlined this one 3 times and started that. And if I had implemented that, who knows where I'd be today. So it's not just learning and being out there. I mean, I often say, I go to the meeting, it's like, oh, haven't you heard these? I said, I just need one nugget. I just need one phrase that can change what I do next week. And that's really the big thing. What do you do with the knowledge that you get, that you listen to? Do you ever take the time to say, okay, how can I implement one of these things? Not turn everything on its head. My staff gets very nervous when I go away to meetings, like, oh my God, he's going to come back and want to do everything. He's going to do everything different next week. But it's really just find those little things that, as you said, it's cumulative, right?
Yeah.
You can't turn everything on its head next week. It's not good for everybody that's around you, but you also need to take something and execute on it. Otherwise, they're just great ideas and they just sit with you, but they don't come into action. So it's really figuring out after you leave, what's the 1 or 2 things that we could do a little bit different that makes us better, gives our clients a better result. And so implementing that. So it's not just the learning, but figuring out, okay, here's the one thing that I'm going to do differently next week with that knowledge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guys, this is the Mike that I bring up all the time in that meeting where we had got to that meeting early. We had our notebooks from the week before the meeting the year before, and we had all the same stuff starred, underlined, circled, and we hadn't done any of it. And so
I hadn't opened that book since I left. Flew back from Texas.
And I think that's a wonderful point. And it's a good one to close on here because, I'm glad you guys tune in to the podcast. But unapplied truth is like unapplied pain. It doesn't do anybody any good. And the good news is, as Mike and I are good examples of this, even if you haven't been great at application, like you learn a lot, you listen to a lot of podcasts, read books, as long as you take the time to recognize that and all of a sudden say, I'm gonna have weekly application time. What is it that's new, that's not a part of my normal, that I'm going to try and work to blend into the rhythm of my operation? And you have to allocate time for that. It's never convenient. It always feels clunky and slow because it's by nature, it's new. Right. It's not muscle memory yet. And it requires a different kind of energy. But I'm going to tell you, the best advisors in the world that I know and that are the happiest, that make the biggest impact on their clients, are those that one, take the first step, like you guys tuning into the podcast. That's great. Then they take the second step, which is they have a diet of weekly making new normal. Yep. And so I think those are great tips. Anything else before we close?
That's it. Even when you start something, it's not going to feel right, as you said, because it's not your normal. And you probably won't do it the right way the first time, but it's staying with it and looking at it and say, well, is this worth it? And if so, stick with that and figure out how to do it. And everybody else will not like to do it and won't embrace it as much. So you got to fight through that noise too.
Yeah.
To say, no, this is going to make a difference and this is right. So let's just stick with it. And if it's not perfect, then all right, how do we tweak it a little bit? But we're not giving up on it completely.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
I think, well, and that's a great point, because most people, if you're running an organization, you need great implementers. And the thing about implementers is typically they are wired for normal. They actually resist change.
Right.
But I find that it's not so much that they resist it. It's they need to believe in where it's taking them. So one of the things we regularly do is say, hey, here's our 3-year vision. Here's where we're headed and where we think. And is everybody excited about that? And then in light of that, we all kind of know, well, different isn't always better. Better is always different.
Right.
And so if we're going to get there, here are like out of the 10 ideas, the 2 things that I think are going to move the needle the most. And we need everybody's help to make this a part of the DNA of the organization. And as you said, Mike, ideas in their first form are generally not the best.
Right.
So you got to iterate on that every week. It's not like, in fact, sometimes now if you're wired, you're listening. I know we have a lot of people that work in these organizations, and you would call yourself an implementer, and you would call yourself, I'm kind of one that resists change. One of the best things you can do, new ideas are so fragile, and they are, when you're trying to work towards the end, don't hope it's going to fail. Because a lot of times I've had team members that it's like, I think you want this not to work. Exactly. You want to tell me why this was a bad idea. And I'm like, but so understand, we're going to iterate it and let everybody know this is not in its final form.
Yep.
We're going to play around with it. We're going to iterate it, and we're going to make it something great. Because ultimately, the one common denominator, whether you're like I'm wired for new, right? I am built around that, or you're wired for let's keep it the same, normal. One thing we all agree on is everybody wants things to be better.
Right.
And to be better, it's got to be different. And so just blending that in, I think, is a critical factor in creating successful practice.
Yep. And I do believe that, as you said, new isn't always better, but better is always new. But it's also, I find that my team will say, well, let's, they don't think they consciously say it, but they'll say, well, we don't do it this week. Will he even notice? And if that can happen for a couple of weeks, we don't have to do that. He's not even
forget about it. Yeah.
You have to follow up and keep that little pressure, that tension on it to say, no, I'm not giving up on this. We just got to tweak it. We're not abandoning it. We're just going to kind of tweak it a little bit. But I do find that, and I sit there and I say, they're just counting. If we don't do it this week and he doesn't check, we're probably clear. We can.
That's right.
It'll be like that book. The noodles will stay in there and it doesn't have to go there.
That's right. No, that's awesome, brother. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show. Always great to be with you. And again, for all of those of you listening, we're going to have some resources up there on what we call our triple T tool, which we talked about in the past, which is like really one of those things. If you're like, I don't even know what to change organizationally right now, this is a great tool because it has every single thing that you would do in a holistic fee-based financial planning practice. Every like if you're a team of 1 or you're a team of 20, these things are getting done, some well, some poorly. But it'll let you kind of rank those things 10, 5, 1. So 10 is those things that this is critical, it be done. And I'm probably, it's my highest and best use to do it. 5 is that thing that's like, it's critical to be done. Probably somebody else can do it and I don't need to do it. And then one of those things you probably not do anymore. They're just not.
Nobody should be doing this.
Yes. Why are we doing
Why are we doing
it? And sometimes it was just not, it was done to begin with. And sometimes it just, things expire, markets move, technology changes. And so go through that. And then the second way you rank it is, does it light you up? If it's 10, it lights me up. I get energy from it. If it's 5, I don't hate it.
Right.
It's just not one of those things I love that I would do all the time if I had a choice. And then 1 is like, I hate this thing.
Right.
I don't want to do this. And so go through that. And what will emerge for you is what your next focus of new should be. Is it hiring a person to kind of encapsulate that? Is it technology that's going to replace some things that maybe you've been doing manually just because it's the way you've always done it in the past?
Right.
So embrace those things. It'll be in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.